Hi, Chris Brown here from the Merry Gamers. I'm talking to Patrick Redding from Ubisoft Toronto about the game that we've been waiting for a few years now.
Yeah.
Splinter Cell Blacklist. So, Patrick, the Adventures of Sam Fisher is not over, but what has been happening in his life since we last saw him in Conviction?
Yeah, I mean, after Conviction, you know, he kind of went on sort of a forced retirement. He sort of left Third Echelon in a smoking pile of rubble behind him, and you know, it looked like there was some question about whether he'd ever be back in the field. But what's happened is we've brought about a crisis that's of sufficient severity that you know, a guy of his patriotism and civic mindedness couldn't stay out of the field. And so essentially what's happened is we've introduced this new threat, which we call the Engineers, and they're basically a kind of a borderless, post-ideological terror network that has launched a series of attacks against the U.S. interests overseas and at home. And they have an ultimatum, which is they want to reduce America's military footprint to basically nothing overseas, and they're willing to step up the pressure through a series of attacks.
Now, being such a storied franchise, there's elements that you want to please long-term players. Can you talk about what both in characters and gameplay that long-time Splinter Cell fans will be able to enjoy in Blacklist?
I mean, something that was super important for us is that we wanted to take some of the things that had worked really well in Splinter Cell Conviction in terms of game mechanics, obviously continue to improve on them and build on them, but we also really wanted to make sure that we consolidated that with stuff that people had really loved about the original series that maybe had been missing for a couple of the games. You know, so the ability for, you know, Sam to move bodies around and to have his night vision goggles in addition to other vision modes, the ability to use his knife to cut through fabrics in order to create paths for himself, the ability to do a number of takedowns from a lot of interesting angles of attack. And I think, you know, we also wanted to really ensure that all of the gadgets and the tech, whether it's the op suits, the goggles, or even some of the more esoteric gadgets that Sam carries, really supported multiple styles of play and really encouraged players to be creative in terms of how they solve the problem of getting through, you know, the enemy patrollers and either remaining undetected or surviving any encounters that they get into.
Well, obviously stealth, a big part of it, that will encourage those players. For those new to the series, there's always a bunch of folks. What can they expect from this game?
I think one thing is that, you know, we recognize that there really are distinct styles of Splinter Cell players, and it's funny because we have incredibly passionate fans on our forums, and they argue amongst themselves about the right way and the wrong way, and they're purists and whatnot. And so there's a few things that we've done. One is, you know, we've built an economy system around the idea that the game will recognize game actions that fit within certain styles of play, and it'll kind of award points for that. So for example, if you're a ghost player who likes to never be detected and never like touches any of the enemies, just like slips through, they never notice you were there, you get out, then, you know, we can recognize that when you're playing that way, and we're rewarding points accordingly. Similarly, if you're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, where you're like, you don't want to leave any witnesses, so you want to breach the door and flashbang the room and shoot everybody in the room and then complete the objective, you know, then we'll obviously be able to recognize that and award points accordingly. And I think what's great for the fans of the series who are coming back to it, maybe, you know, after a long time, is that in addition to our basic difficulty modes, you know, kind of like rookie, normal, and realistic, we've added this fourth mode we call Perfectionist mode, which basically forces players to play this game like it's old school Splinter Cell. You know, it takes away a lot of the helpers like mark and execute. None of your goggles will see through walls anymore. The AI is incredibly dangerous. You know, it's kind of one shot, one kill on the player. And what we've noticed in playtests that's really cool is that you can take someone who played the entire campaign on Perfectionist or on realistic mode, say, hey, how'd you like to go back and replay some maps in Perfectionist? And it completely changes the way they play. Like, you watch them become old school Splinter Cell players, which is really neat. So in a way, you know, we've kind of offered a number of different elements of the original Splinter Cell, as well as some new elements of basic Conviction. And then I think the other thing, obviously, which people are going to want to talk about, is the return of Spies vs. Mercs as a multiplayer mode. And this was the mode that kind of has been famous since pretty much the second game in the series. That's our asymmetric adversarial mode, where you have a first-person mercenary player versus a third-person spy player in various combinations. And, you know, there's been a few different incarnations of that mode over the course of the series, and now we've been able to bring it back. We're obviously going to be adding a whole lot of new things there for players who want to partake of some new modes, but the classic Spies vs. Mercs is definitely definitely there, and I think players are going to be super excited to see it.
One thing I'm always interested in is the ability the replayability of a game even after they finish the main campaign. And one thing I noticed in the Driven demo today was you have a unique or a very special way of doing that in use of the SMI. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Let me make sure I'm catching what you mean by that. So in terms of like replayability of the content?
Yeah, be able to play different missions that may come up and...
Okay, yeah, I can talk about that. So we are doing something a little different with the Splinter Cell in that Sam is now not only the guy out in the field, but he's also the one calling the shots. He's the one that runs fourth echelon, he's kind of in charge. And so he has this playable hub that he comes back to between all of his missions where he can interact with his team, you know, he can check on the latest intel, he can upgrade his gear, all of that. And he uses what we call the strategic mission interface of the SMI to serve as kind of his window on the world. So he can see where the various hotspots are that are related to the Blacklist crisis. And those hotspots represent the single player missions that you can go on, as well as co-op missions that you may have found out about through the NPCs, as well as Spies vs. Mercs missions that pop up when your friends come online. And so what we're trying to do with that is almost kind of like eliminate the menu as the way you navigate through the content of the game. We're trying to instead push the content to the player in this really transparent way that's right in front of you. It's on a map, and you can select it anytime you want, and you never feel like you're having to quit out of one thing in order to do something else.
Nice. Now this is coming out this late summer. Can you tell the date and what they can find it on?
Yeah, so we're going to be out on August 20th on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and on PC concurrently.
Nice. And there's pre-order incentives?
Yeah, we're offering definitely some pre-order incentives through a couple of different channels. The basic opportunity there, you know, like for example, ordering through Amazon is to get $10 of their instant video credit. Some other outlets are offering similar deals as well. It's definitely, you know, you go to your favorite outlet and you'll find it. There's a few different versions of special editions of the game that are going to be available. Of course, people have started to hear about the collector's edition, which includes not only the upper echelon pack of the game, but also our fully functional flying radio-controlled Paladin aircraft. Nice. It flies at about 35 miles per hour, has a range of about 250 feet. As well, the 80-page graphic novel Echoes, which covers the events in between Conviction and the beginning of Blacklist.
Now, will you guys be using a season pass with Blacklist?
We're not ready to talk yet about all of our online offerings, so there's going to be a lot of big announcements about that in the coming weeks as we start to reveal more about how the co-op and especially Spies vs. Mercs multiplayer is going to be, you know, showcased. But there's definitely going to be news on that.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
You bet.